Okay, the recording has started. So good morning, everyone. With the warmer weather here, at least it's not cold. We're doing good. Our last meeting was held on May 17th, 2023. Barry Mandel with Kendall and Pasanello Fuels presented on oil analysis and the benefits of oil analysis, which we here at Shenandoah do, and it does save you. It does save us a lot. So it detects abnormal wear of bearings. It will assist in change intervals, oil change intervals, reduces unscheduled downtime. It helps support your warranty claim. So if you have an engine failure, if you're doing your oil analysis, it will benefit you in proving that you're taking care of your engines and changing the oils and looking at the results to try to increase. Maybe you might have to change your oil more frequently on certain buses. And it increases the equipment lifespan. As we all know, just in your car, just changing the oil more often and doing regular maintenance to it will definitely make it last longer. We have there's a system that they talked about called infrared analysis. And what that does is it detects water, glycol, soot, fuel, and oxidation in the oil. So that's pretty valuable. You can determine the different components that are failing or soon to fail. Your lubrication analysis report will be emailed to you. So you can keep it in a file and you'll have it in case you need it to look back at any of the history that's been done to it, along with if you had a warranty issue that you were trying to put your engine through to get it covered, you could go back in your emails and find all of your reports for that specific bus, and you can use that to your advantage. So today's meeting is our DOT roundtable. Our presenters are going to be Jeff Corey and Chad Smith. Jeff Corey is an intermodal specialist 2 with in transportation. It's an ITS 2. He is a field operations manager. I think everybody here knows who Jeff Corey is. And Chad Smith has the same title, and he works in the main office. So with that being said, take it away, Jeff Corey. Jeff, we can't hear you if you're speaking.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear
you. Good morning. I thank everybody for joining this morning. I also have Chad Smith here. We work together in the main office. Chad handles a lot of our busnet information behind the scenes. He deals with any technical questions, and he's the overall main office manager along with Jim Leonard and myself. We do have several questions that we would like to address this morning. They were sent in by Dan and the head mechanics last week. We'll do our best to answer them correctly. It's going to be very informal. Any questions that you have at the end, we can address the best that we can. If I don't have an answer, I'll get back with Dan with the information. So basically, I'll just go through and read the questions and give our answers. The first one has to do with electronic DVIRs, and Chad Smith is actually going through the regulations and what we would expect to see at the time of inspection.
So in regards to electronic DBIRs, there are a number of different systems that can be in compliance with our New York State DOT regulations. Our regulations were written in 1999, and although they point to these records and files that are required to be on paper, we have accepted them in an electronic format so long as they meet all the information of the regulations. So the first question that we had here is in regards to electronic DVIRs. If the mileage is entered wrong, you cannot go back and correct it. So how much of an issue will it be in regards to if it's substantiated in the notes, if the mileage has a discrepancy from one day to the next? And the same for a defect when there was no defect. So say, for example, the driver entered it incorrectly. So in response to this, there are systems that we've been aware of that actually do allow administrators the ability to edit the items that are listed by the drivers. Usually it'll display in the system as an edited item, in which case our staff may be looking for follow-up to substantiate the fact that what edit was done and what was the reason behind it. Ultimately, the portion that affects this is the driver certification. The driver needs to sign or e-sign the DVIRs to indicate that the information was correct. If it isn't correct, entering such items as notes, editing are permissible so long as there's a substantiation to it and a tracking of that information. So if we've got one of our inspectors going in and they see, a broken windshield defect indicated on a DBIR, I would like to think that our inspectors would look at the notes and in the notes, if the driver then had some sort of indicator saying I accidentally checked this, but the windshield is not an issue, I would like to think our inspectors would consider that to be an edit or a correction or an indication that was entered incorrectly. In regards to mileage gaps, we do look for mileage gaps. So our inspectors should be looking for times where the vehicle may have been used when there was no DBIR presented or filled out. So mileage gaps are significant in the sense that it could point to use of the vehicle where a DBIR wasn't filled out. So again, with that same sort of ideology, if you've got a driver who enters the wrong mileage and there's no way to edit it through the program, either adjusting it with notes or even putting some additional information attributable to that DVR would be helpful, because otherwise we may be looking at that as a potential defect in the maintenance review of the vehicle. The one thing that I do kind of want to point out here is that open communication is key. We do allow these to be reviewed electronically. Some of the key aspects of these electronic DVIRs is that they have to be readily accessible during the inspection. You can't expect our inspectors to have to go back into the office area to review these in an office setting. They should be available in the garage. In the event that these electronic DVIRs are not available at the time of the inspection, our inspectors may ask for them to be printed out. So if there's an issue or something like that, they may need to be printed out, and we can request that. Not having those printable could be an issue, and might be something that our inspectors might indicate a maintenance note on the inspection form. And we've encountered a number of different circumstances where the staff don't have the knowledge or ability to access the system appropriately to provide the information that's required for our regulations. So ultimately, that's been a tripping point as well. So it's important to either have the staff on site that can provide this information to us, or just print out the information. With that being said, we don't necessarily want the 354 pages. We should be able to request 1 month 1 month of DVIRs for that particular vehicle, and should be able to have those in a format that we would anticipate, meeting the regulations. So it should be done up by date, bus number, and all the heading information. So I realize I threw a whole bunch of information out, but is there any questions in regards to that?
Okay.
Well, you would just, like, if you needed 30 days worth, we should be able to just go in and just print 30 days, or would you need more than 30 days? Because we normally have right now, the folders are a couple months worth. So would there be a time when you would need all those? Say the computer wasn't showing them and you needed them all. Would you ask for those all to be printed out?
So generally what we request, or what we have set up for our staff, is that they would randomly select a 30-day period of time within the last 6 months. And our staff are supposed to be reviewing the DBIRs for that 30-day period of time. It's supposed to be random, so they may be selecting any month during that time frame at the time of the inspection. They're going to do that at the time of the inspection, not beforehand. So if there is no ability to bring up those 30 days at the time of the inspection, having the 6 months would cover you, but it's a lot of work, and the staff would need to be able to show us which, 30 days represent the month of March, which 30 days represent the month of August type thing. Right. Now, if something happened and you couldn't print those out, would the bus fail? Would it not be presentable? Say the computer system crashed that day and we couldn't print them out. Would that bus get an A defect, or how would that work? Good question. So long as there was not a recent safety defect that wasn't addressed, and we would ultimately find that on the inspection, but just not having the actual documentation, they're done up as maintenance citations, which are in this essence notes, so they don't affect the ability of the vehicle, but they do get tracked in our system, where if you're consistently having issues in regards to DBIRs, it may spawn additional checks, either through our motor carrier investigators, to find out what's going on. Why are we always constantly missing DVIRs? Why are we constantly missing preventative maintenance mileage intervals and that kind of thing? Okay, so then from what you just said, we still could present a bus and it would still pass DOT if you did have the occasional internet outage or computer crash and we couldn't even provide the DVIRs, the electronic ones. That is correct. They don't impact the actual inspection out of service criteria. Okay.
Dan? And I do want to mention up with Chad. Recently, we've been having, say, a driver wrote up a defect on the DBIR, and the driver now, again, cannot show us where the report's been made for that defect, and they cannot find a work order. So we're really running problems where the personnel are not trained on how to use the system to bring that information up. And that's really causing confusion on our inspector side, because they're not viewing the documents as we should be seeing them. So we really encourage the garages to train their personnel on how to retrieve the data from the systems and have it correct.
Dan, what we've been doing here is we take 6 months of our buses that we have to do that for that particular week, and we download them to a separate file for that week. So those are those 6 buses for that week in a file, and that's the file we present to the DOT inspector. So it's an extra 5 steps we have to do, but at least we have it ready for, so they don't have to come up to the office. They have a laptop, and the inspector just goes onto the laptop and can view the 6 months of all the buses we're doing. But on another mileage question I have for Jeff or Chad is, if let's say a dealer come and takes your bus and drives it to their dealership for warranty repair and then drives it back, they can't log into our electronic system. So technically you're missing mileage, but you do have an invoice that backs up the mileage that's missing. Is that okay? Or is that going to be a notation eventually?
That's a very good question. I think that you would find that the responsibility for the DVIR at that point would be the dealership who's taking possession of the vehicle. So I would like to think that our staff would be sitting there and ask and reach out, well, what's going on with this particular mileage gap? I would hope that, you know, your staff would be able to say, oh, well, this is an invoice or a document showing that it went back to Matthews, Leonard's, or New York Bus Sales, or wherever it may go. And I would like that our staff would then connect the dots in regards to that. So I think that kind of the responsibility for that DVIR is with the dealer, and I would hope that our staff would be able to connect the dots to make that assumption and to understand that, yeah, the vehicle's out for repair, and that's the reason why the DVIR wasn't available that day.
Okay. And John, so you put them on like a pen drive, just a little thumb drive, and that way when you're doing your DOT inspections, he's got them right there on a thumb drive.
We actually, we create another folder on our computer system. So it's access to a shared drive. So
Okay.
anybody that has access to the shared drive can get it. So we don't, in case you lose the thumb drive or someone locks the thumb drive in their toolbox, you don't have it. So it's on a shared drive. So any of the mechanics can get on the shared drive and pull that folder up for that particular week.
Okay.
And then the only other thing I would actually mention here is that we previously put out that if it's agreeable with the inspector, there's nothing that prevents, you know, your staff from emailing it to them, but it has to be acceptable to the inspector. You can potentially email those to the inspector if the inspector agrees that that's a manner that they can do, and that might be able to help. It sounds like some of these additional steps that may be able to help on the day of inspection. So at least wanted to bring that up, if as kind of a relief valve, if that makes sense here as well.
Any other questions on DBIRs? Okay, the next question is concerning tablets. Is there a DOT regulation or a DMV regulation regarding tablets for directions or mappings? Are the screens supposed to go black or dark while the bus is in motion? And what is the ruling on this? Basically, in 2018, DOT, we changed our policy on electronic devices, namely the GPS and the tablets that were coming into service in the vehicle. The screens do not need to go dark. We felt, and we actually engaged the New York State Police and DMV in our decision. The screens do not have to go dark during the operation of the motor vehicle. This was mainly for the GPS screens because we felt that seeing the directions on the screen is much more beneficial than just hearing directions. This actually went into more of the systems. People are using tablets now for routings and things of that sort, student tracking. The issue with the tablets is the driver is not supposed to have interaction with these tablets once the bus is in motion. So the screens can stay active, but the program should be, or the GPS should be programmed prior to using them. And also the tablets, you could be in violation of the VTL 375 or 1225D if you actually use them while the vehicle is in motion. And again, the tablets can't block any of the forward vision of the driver, things of that. A lot of times during the DOT inspection, we do not see the buses with tablets in them because sometimes they're removed, they're taken to the office for the night. They're not in the bus during the inspection. So not sure if that answers all of the questions on the tablet?
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, just unmute your microphone and ask away.
So on the driver is not supposed to be looking at the screen. So that's a DMV traffic law. It's not a DOT law, but you can't prevent the driver from, you can't police the drivers from looking at
That
the
is correct. Yes, we turn it into an operational issue. That's why I was mentioning during the DOT inspection, we do not see the tablets usually in the buses, but that is a operational issue that the operators have to monitor themselves. DOT would not even police that or get involved with the use of the tablet. You know, that's more of a DMV regulation and law.
But believe me, if you've got an issue where you've got a driver interacting with the device, the state police and local enforcement that driver would be subject to any enforcement in regards to that. There'd be questions asked if you had an accident because the driver was sitting there playing around with the device, and through interview or whatever other means, they determined that driver was distracted by it. It would be a causality issue and potentially subject to enforcement action. Just because it's not part of the purview of our inspection doesn't mean that it's not going to cause an issue underway. So it is important to make sure your staff, if you've got devices and you hear or know that they're being utilized while the vehicle's in motion, it is imperative to make sure that you get that information to the drivers and get it handled, because the last thing you want is an accident to be caused by driver distraction related to a device.
So just to sum it up again, just the tablet usage is allowed. DOT does not police if it's being used while the bus is in motion. That is not under our jurisdiction. Just the installation, wiring, and the placement of it is what we'll check. Any other comments on that? Okay, the next question are for stop sign lights. How many, if any, LEDs can be out? 1, 2, 30, and basically for the people that's been around for several years, I think it was around 2012. Prior to 2012, and I'm just using that as a timeline, any LEDs out in any light fixture would be a failure. In around that time, between 2012 and 2013, we updated our LED policy, and if there was any LEDs out, but it had one diode that was operational, the light would pass inspection. On the MC300, we would know a 9902, and the operator has 15 days to replace the LED assembly. And recently, we've been getting a lot of inquiries on this from especially the contractors and some of the operators. We engage DMV because really the lighting regulation is a DMV regulation that we enforce. DMV's regulation, if you went to a garage, a DMV inspection facility, they would actually place the vehicle out of service if the LEDs were out during their inspection. So we're actually more lenient than DMV is indicating to us. So right now, if you have an LED light and it has any diodes that are out, it's a 15-day repair, and it really doesn't list as a defect. We put it under a note 9902 and tell you which light fixture is out, and you have 15 days to repair. Any questions on that?
And you guys water is still okay, right? You can have water in there. We still have a lot of taking on water.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And we all know that once the water is in the fixture, it's going to fail at some point. But
yeah,
they moisture, and the manufacturer tried to come up with a field repair. If you guys remember, some of them were drilling small pilot holes in some of the light fixtures, but as long as the light fixture is operational is what we're looking at.
Okay.
The next question is, if a fuse that powers a wheelchair lift blows during the inspection, is it a failure even though when the fuse is replaced, the lift works properly? And basically, anytime anything does not work during the inspection, it's either A failure, B, or C, depending on the criteria. But in this case, if the lift did not work when it was being checked during the inspection, it would be a failure. Even if that fuse blew, we don't know why it blew or when it blew. But if we check it, at the time that we check it, if it's not in operation, that would fall as a failure. And sometimes, this fuse didn't blow for no reason. Something happened along the way, whether there was a surge or if there was a power issue with the cable, the fuse blew for a reason. So yes, that would stand as a failure. Any questions on that? The next question is, as you all know, we did away with Wig Wags about a year and a half ago. And the question is, you need to remove the airline if they remove the wig wag, or can it just be capped? Basically, this would fall under removing any options, because once we removed it from our regulation, wig wags are now an option. Even if they're installed, they must work as installed. If you remove the wig wag, which you're allowed to do, we prefer that line to be removed and capped at the closest point to the wet tank. There are some instances where they're also using the same airline to supply accessories. So at that point, you might have to just go back to the furthest that you can to the wet tank and still have everything else work. But the line should be removed and capped closest to the wet tank. Any questions there? The next question is, does electric vehicle conversion kits pass the DOT inspection? Basically, we do have two companies that we are aware of that are doing electric conversions, removing the diesel engines and putting into the electric motors. Unique Electric Solutions and C Electric are the two companies that we are aware of. They have both contacted NHTSA, and because they're really not remanufacturing the bus, they're only doing a power unit. They do not have to recertify the bus that when they do these conversions. But in short, yes, they will pass the DOT inspection as long as all of the safety items are met for the 720 regulation. And also, we're going to require a new weight slip to make sure that the buses are not overweight. Even taking out the diesel engines and the transmission, there are concerns about the weight of the batteries. We've been finding that they're about equal on the weight so far, but we do require a new weight slip. And the company that does the conversion will actually put a tag into the bus showing what system was installed, the serial numbers, and the date of that installation. I believe right now we have about 5 or 6 of them, and they're mainly on Long Island at this point. Any questions on that?
I have Unique Electric Solutions. What was the other company that does the conversions?
It's called C Electric, SEA Electric. And I believe they're both based in California, but I'm not totally sure on that, but that's what I believe the last thing that I read on them. And I believe they have been working with NYSERDA also on some of these grants for the repowers. There are some grants through NYSERDA to, receive funds to do this. The next question is the electric vehicle mandates from New York State. DOT is really not involved in any of those mandates. This is new to all of us. So as we move along, I think it's going to be an eye-opener for all of us. It's a unique system. But DOT is not involved in those mandates. Currently, just as a reference item, I checked this morning, we currently have 46 electric buses in service in New York State. So that number continues to grow as we move, ahead in time. And I know Bluebird, Thomas, the larger manufacturers have been putting on training sessions for the school districts, mechanics, first responders. We have been very fortunate at DOT. We have about 95 of our 115 inspectors trained at awareness level. So we are getting on board. Again, it's new to all of us as we move forward. So, but as far as the mandate, DOT is not involved with any of the mandates. Any questions or comments? The next question is, we learned that some of the high voltage wiring in the electric bus will trigger a light to illuminate on the dash when damaged. Is this light being a failure or become a failure? We have been speaking to the manufacturers. Right now, we're still gathering information on what lights, the telltale lights, the MIL lights that will show up on the dashboard. Speaking to, and I will speak about Thomas, they do have a dashboard that will show a light if the wirings are damaged. And at this point, it will be out of service because DOT cannot determine why the light's on and what wiring is damaged. So we will place that bus out of service if that light is on during the inspection. And as we move forward, speaking to Thomas, they're actually changing their dashboards for the next year model. So we will keep updating on these lights and gather more information, and we will put that out as we get a whole package together. Any questions on that?
So
then,
that,
I mean,
yep.
Oops, sorry. The only thing I would say is
so that light being on is going to be considered like the same as a check engine light. It's
Correct. Yeah.
a different light, but that light could come on for any reason, I guess. But if that light's on, it is going to be an A failure.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
now from the information that I've seen is that there's, with these high voltage lines, there's there's some grounding or some other issues in relationship to that potential wire. So if you get a crimp or something like that, it could impact the grounding of the system, or could impact the ability of the system to function. So that's where it's actually going to become a safety issue, is that it does impact the safety of that particular vehicle. It's a high voltage line, and it actually has there's some grounding that goes through the sheathing, and also and then also if it doesn't have the proper setup, it will not allow the vehicle to work, or you may have problems with the vehicle working because of that wire damage. So it's not just because the wire may be damaged; it may be impacting other systems as well.
Actually, Roger is raising his hand. I'm sure he can fill us in more on the light operation.
Some of this would be a sort of a moot topic. Quite honestly, Jeff, if those lights come on, the system will either shut down or will not engage. So it's not a matter of having an inspection on it. The bus would not be inspectable. You could not use it.
Okay. So at that point, they can't even present the vehicle because it will shut itself down.
Okay. Well,
It's
yeah,
not
that's,
so much that it will shut down. In some cases, these safety issues on these new buses are so sensitive. If they start to feel a problem is occurring, they will warn the driver with a dash light, number one. Number two, they may prevent the unit from ever restarting. It will not allow the contactors to close. It will continue to run as a safety factor to get the bus to a safe location. But once that vehicle is shut down, it will not restart.
okay. So as of now, we're not going to have like a random wire light that comes on the dash, and we just won't be able to present it. It's not going to be like a little indicator that's been on for a week. It's going to shut down, like you said, correct?
It will continue to, that we can't just shut it down. And I think everyone's aware of that. If you have a vehicle on the road with children in it, I have to have the ability to move the vehicle off the road.
Mm-hmm.
But once it's off, if the driver turns it off, and that's really, we're under driver control here. If the driver turns it off, it will not restart. The bus is out of commission, the contractors would be opened, and that would be the end of operation. It isn't a situation where we're going to bring a bus in for DOT and there's a light on. Most of those cases, you'll never be able to get the bus into the shop because it's dead in the yard someplace.
Okay. I guess that puts a little bit more light on it. Thank you.
The next question, do all of the power wires to a wheelchair lift have to be loomed, or is the case that the wires sufficient? I'm assuming that they're talking about the main power lead to the wheelchair. Usually they are a single layer of insulation. And if that's the case, that wire does need to have wire loom over it. If the wire is protected by outside insulation and then it has individual wires inside it that's also insulated, they do not require the wire loom on the outside because now you have two layers of protection. But if it's a solid wire with one layer of insulation, it does require to be loomed. Any questions on that? And that's actually under our 720.6D, if anyone's looking into electric wires. 720.6D is in David. The next one is on electric bus mandate. They have to keep the buses longer. And I'm assuming they're getting into because of the cost of them. And they're asking about rust, if it will fail the inspection and how much rust can it have. Some of this can be very subjective on the rust. Surface rust would be allowed. When you get into any sharp rust sticking through, any holes, metal protruding from the vehicle, that's where it starts getting into an issue and would become a failure. Anytime that somebody could be injured on it by running their hands across it. We all understand in upstate New York, we do have surface rust. But the extent of it, if it's getting into holes through the panel, that's where there would have to be some kind of corrective action to take care of it. Any questions on that? The last, no, I have one more, and then Dan, if you have any other ones. This question has to do with non-presents, and if you non-present a vehicle, does it become a full inspection when it's presented the next time if you're a preferred operator? So there's a couple things that play into here. Non-presents, we actually did away with non-presents back in 2019. If the vehicle is not presented to us when it's scheduled, and again, we're saying we're calling you 5 days in advance of that appointment. We understand they might have, you're waiting for parts, mechanical issues, the supply chain, they're out to a body shop for some kind of work, they're at a dealership. At that point, if you're not going to present the vehicle for inspection at the scheduled time, we actually POS the vehicle. We put it permanently out of service. At that point, we try to wait up to just prior to that expiration. So say we schedule it 2 weeks early from the expiration date and you do not present it, we will make a note on the MC300 that it's not presented, and just prior to the expiration, we will put it out of service. And at that point, it's a POS, permanently out of service. There are no more non-presents. The vehicle is either in service with a valid inspection on it, or it's out of service. For the people that are preferred operators, they actually get critical item inspections every 6 months, and then you have a full inspection. If you non-present a bus and you're a preferred operator and it was due for a critical item inspection, that does change over to a full inspection when you present it. So again, we call it today for the inspection. You're not going to give it to us as scheduled. The next time we see it, we will do a full inspection on it. And basically, again, these POSs, if you non-present one and we POS it, and now next time you want to give us 7 or 8 vehicles because we already have 6 scheduled, that POS is going to be done at the end of the day if we have time. So it's very imperative that you try to keep some kind of schedule, and maybe if you non-present one today and you know it's going to happen, you pull one from your next appointment and put it into that slot so you're not missing the day. And then you could easily slip the next one into the next inspection date. Any questions or concerns on that?
Well, let's say a district had a few buses, and one of them, they had 2 more weeks until it was going to expire, and they were going to pull it in for an inspection, and they found something, so they didn't present it, and they fixed it. Say it was a rotted light, and it took them a little bit of time. They fixed the rotted light. They still have 2 weeks. Can they run that bus until the next inspection, or is that permanently out of service? Because
no, you can still use it because the inspection certificate is still valid. It's on the windshield.
okay,
So you can use it up to the point that we POS.
okay,
That is correct. And the last thing that I want to bring up, we've been getting a lot of inquiries on full-size vans for school use. Basically, any vehicle that has a seating capacity of 11 or more, including the driver, must be in for school use. So these are school vehicles, 11 or more, including the driver, must be a certified school bus or a multifunction school activity bus, depending on the usage of how they're going to use it. If they're using it for home to school, school to home, that would be a school bus. If they're using it point A to point B, it would be a multifunction school activity bus. Full-size vans, again, seating 11 or more, including the driver, just the standard production van is not allowed to be used in school service. And we will deny the inspection. If one is presented to us, we will deny doing that inspection. And that is a state law and also federal law. So if the vehicle is 10 or less, including the driver, it's allowed, either MPV or passenger vehicle is allowed in school service as manufactured. Again, 11 or more must be a school bus or a multifunction school activity bus. If you look at the federal label on the doors, and it shows a type of bus, and in parentheses it says not school bus, it is not allowed in school service. And there's been a lot of confusion. There's been some bids put out through BOCES incorrectly that you're allowed to buy a standard production van seating 11 or more and use it for school, and that is not correct. So it seems like the last 6 to 8 months we have been fielding a lot of questions on these smaller vans. Any questions or concerns on that? Okay, Dan, do you have any other questions, comments?
No, I didn't get any. I gave you all the ones that we had. Yeah, I think we're good unless anybody has any questions, any last minute questions that they have for DOT. Just unmute your microphone and ask away. If not, yep.
Yeah, if no one has questions, they can always send them to Dan. Many of you have my email address. You can submit them to me. I'll submit them back to Dan with questions, the answers to them. And again, I just want to say thanks for the time that you guys take and run safe fleets and do the right thing. We're all here for the safety of getting the children to school safely. So,
hey,
just want to.
When do you think the electronic DVIRs are going to be mandatory for the school bus industry like they are the trucking industry?
That's a good question. So as what you're referring to already is the federal commercial motor vehicle law requirements and so forth. They don't apply for school and they don't apply for New York State. We actually, our DBIR requirements actually are different than the feds. We still require DBIRs even if you find no defects, which is a difference from the federal commercial motor vehicle regulations. I don't know that I'm not sure that our regulations are going to change anytime soon, if at all. There is a value to the DVIRs because it's a tracking system of both having the driver do the pre-trip and post-trip inspections, but also documenting them up. I can't tell you that it's never going to go away and that it'll be sent over to an electronic version. We do accept the electronic version, but there's definitely no requirements, and I don't have any visibility to it being a requirement to do these electronically. I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
It kind of does, but it leads me to another question, which is, if I say I'm like one of them border schools and I'm constantly running into like Massachusetts, Vermont, every day, say, am I required by the federal to have the electronic DVIRs?
That's a good question. I'm not aware of any electronic DVIR requirement for commercial motor vehicles. I know there is some talk about it, but there's nothing that I'm aware of codified. I would have to review. But what I am aware of is the hours of service. You do have electronic logs for hours of service. That is a requirement if you're a commercial motor vehicle. Commercial motor vehicle regulations going interstate is not going to apply if you're doing school to home, home to school. But if you're doing anything other than that, as a private company, then you would require those hours of service. You're also exempt if you're a school, a subdivision of government, which a central school district would be considered that. So the commercial motor vehicle regulations don't apply for school to home, home to school, ever, and also not to subdivisions of government. So if you're a central school district, you don't have to worry about those hours of service federally crossing state lines. You do if you're a private contractor, you're a school bus company that contracts out to schools, then you would have to be in compliance with those electronic hours of service laws going across state lines. At this point, but to answer the question, I'm only aware of the electronic logs for hours of service. I'm not aware of any requirement for electronic DVIRs at this time. I'm going to do some research, and if I find anything different than what I'm saying right now, I'll make sure I get to Dan with some of that information to correct that.
Well, I might have been confused, but I know they like link them together because they're putting in their hours of service and their DVIRs together. Like, you know, so I could be confused on that.
Well, and that's permissible too federally, and it makes sense. It makes it easier because if you're already doing hours of service electronically, many different companies and so forth have incorporated that and made the electronic DVRs to correspond with that, just because it's easier as a better business model sometimes, depending upon how you're doing it. But it's not really required to be electronic for the DVIRs at this point that I'm aware of.
Any other questions or concerns? We will be presenting, just for people's knowledge, we will be presenting for the summer seminar in Syracuse on July 13th. I know Dan and Peter has been putting out a great deal of information on how to get signed up and, take advantage of the training classes prior to the 13th. I believe it's Wednesday the 12th. They're giving some training classes, and then the seminar will be on the 13th. We will be doing a presentation basically on out-of-service criteria, the rates over the last 5 or 6 years, and things of that sort. So I hope to see all of you guys there on the 13th.
All right. Does anybody have anything else to add? No more questions or anything? I just want to say that DOT has been great. We've been working with them, putting the hand sanitizers in. I know I submitted some pictures of where we were going to mount our tablets when we put the tablets in. They even came and looked at where we were going to put them to make sure that it was good before we went through and did a bunch of them. So, the relationship is really good between all the districts and DOT. And that's why we do this anyway, just to keep everybody on the same page, knowing that the inspectors are what they're looking for. And like I said, it's all about the safety, keeping the buses safe. So with that being said, I want to thank you, Jeff. And what else we got here? We have thank you, Jeff and Chad, for your presentation today and taking the time to answer all of our questions. Appreciate it. And Yep. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, we're good. We just said thank you for having us, and always keep that communication open. They can email you, Dan, or like I say, who has my email, they can email me direct.
Yeah, and any information that I get from these guys, I will definitely get it to all of our members. So at this point, everybody should have a sign-up sheet for the summer seminar. If you don't, I sent another one out this morning, but if you didn't get it or something's going on, please email me. Let me know that you didn't get the sign-up sheet. Now, I had a few districts asking about the POs. They're like, you want us to fill it out now, but we don't get POs open again until the next school year. And on the bottom of our sign-up sheet, it says, pending purchase order number will be sent after the start of the 23-24 school year. And so we're okay with that. But what we need everybody to start signing up your mechanics. It's important that we get at least somewhat of a head count of who's going to be there, how many people we're anticipating. So if we can do that, that would be greatly appreciated. while we're on the summer seminar, our presentations, and like Jeff Corey just said, they're going to be presenting on the 13th. And we're going to have, there's going to be one of the classes is going to be a panel of manufacturers and they're going to speak about what's coming up down the road here with as far as electric vehicles, and a timeline as to up until now and where they see things going. Another class that we're going to have is Cummins Engine Diagnostics. It's going to be with Insight, and they're also going to talk about the upcoming engine platforms that they're going to have. And the third one is the New York State DOT, which Jeff was just speaking about. Now, those classes are going to be going on along with the trade show. The day before that, I've sent this out. I think everybody should have it. And this is on the 12th. Matthews is going to be putting out, it's like, it starts at 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. They're going to be having a free training for the electric buses. So they'll be going over a lot of stuff, the safety liner, really keeping the information out there. And along with that, there's New York Bus Sales is going to have Bluebird electric buses. They're also going to be speaking with Cummins and the EV bus that Bluebird has. So they're going to have a full day of training the day before our seminar as well. So the 12th is going to be a very busy day as well. And that's the day I believe that we're going to be moving into the On Center. So definitely sign up for the training, take advantage of this. This is going to be a really good event. It's they're providing lunch. It looks like food and stuff. So it should be a really good training seminar here. And if you didn't receive that, please let me know. It looks just like this one right here. I don't know if everybody can see that. And you even have a sign up, which was in that email. So you can sign up for the class right there so that they can anticipate how many people are going to be there. Does anybody have any questions about the summer seminar before we move on to the next topic here and then close the meeting? Okay, we do have 2 winners of the scholarship. We had a couple of applicants. We have 2 that are both going to win $350 towards their education. I will announce the winners in an email because we just finished this, and it's going to be, I just have to go to the steering committee before we go public with it. So look for that. And does anybody have anything else to add to today's meeting? If not, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting. Though I should say before we close that our next meeting, look for our page to update. At this same meeting where I'm going to discuss the winners of the scholarship program, we're going to set up the next year's training. So we're working on that, but I will put it out along with the 2 winners. So that's when the date of the meeting and all that, and the training topics will all be on there. So if anybody has any training topics that they would like covered this year, definitely email them to me. I know we have PESH laws like we were going to do last year, but that fell apart. We have one this year. They're going to do it. And that's just one of them. But we'll probably hit on the electric buses again just to see what changed. But if anybody has any training topics that they want covered, please let me know and we'll make sure that it happens. Other than that, I will see everybody at the On Center, and we'll close the meeting for today. I want to thank everybody for attending. The meeting is recorded, so you can always go back and look at our YouTube channel. And that's it. I'm going to close the meeting. Thank you, everybody.